It's truly interview season at home as my firstborn gives quite a few college interviews. And so, Hasita, I must ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I literally stayed out of the career trajectory, so I wouldn't be asked that question. But here we are.
Isn't it just the worst? I mean, 5 years is a long time.
It is a long time, and I think it's only becoming longer in some ways. The pace at which the world is changing. Do I sound very old? I don't know, but it really feels like things are changing very quickly, and I think the world really does belong to those who can really ride that tide over and over and over again. And I've seen this with folk in the family. I've seen it with friends, older colleagues. Uh, the people who've been humble enough, I think, and open minded enough to keep reinventing themselves, they
Hmm.
seem to, do just fine in life. It's a very
Hmm.
curious thing. Yeah.
No, it is, and I think that those who are kind of reinventing themselves for us, for those of us who are seeing them from an outside view, I have a feeling the individual is not so much reinventing, but just continuously living in the present. They're just continuously saying, "Hey, what do I want to be doing today? What do I know, and hence what's the gap, and what else should I know?" Right, and just continuously working on the person they are today, knowing that the future me is just going to
Maybe
appear.
a very different. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Subha, that reminds me of a very particular person, and she was a colleague to both of us at one point. In fact, she started out as a client with Rainkraft, and then she started working with me, and now she's, in her third role in the time that we've kind of known her. And I think that's so true, because every time I talk to her, it's always very reassuring, because she sounds like someone who is exactly where she belongs. And I envy
Mhm.
that so much, in the sense that I look at her and I see someone who's not been afraid to. I was thinking that it was reinventing, but I see now that all she was really doing, and she was doing it with so much passion, but she was being present to whatever opportunity presented itself, right? Because I'm just thinking, to go from being somebody's client to somebody's
Mm.
employee, it's not easy, no? Especially on the ego. I mean, I'm just saying it's
Yeah,
not always an
yeah.
easy transition to make.
And then many times the biggest barrier is the ego, right? What will
Yeah.
people think, or how can this be me? And that's
Yeah.
sometimes the biggest barrier. No, I get you, and I think let's spend some time on something that's been on my mind ever since I heard Shankar Vedantam talk about future self. Let's really talk about future self and the today self.
For sure. Excited.
Welcome to Small Talk with Rainkraft. I'm Subha, a leadership and executive coach.
And I'm Hasita, a marketing strategist.
We're just two people who love to talk
and love to learn.
And this is us being curious about the world around us.
Join us.
So, the question really that Shankar Vedantam, who hosts the very popular Hidden Brain podcast, is posing is, do we really know what the future holds? Right? And what he's trying to say is that we don't know what our future self is going to look like. And he takes it to, 20 years from now or 20 years, where we're very well able to see that in hindsight, this is the journey I traversed, and this is how, A version of B became B version of me. But who I will be 20 years from now, I really can't see that today, right? And so that got me thinking, how much should I worry about that future self, or what should I do in kind of readiness for that future self?
And honestly, I think even on a systems level, that is proving to be true, right? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we were in college, we were taught JavaScript, and some of us went on to study Python and a lot of other programming languages, which I'm sure are still relevant today to some extent. But the
Reality, you just reminded me that I learned BASIC and COBOL. So Thanks for that.
So yeah, I mean, you're just proving my point for me, which is that we live in a world of no code, right? I mean, you and I can go on Wix or Webflow and build a website. I mean, I'm sure it's not going to look extremely pretty, but it's going to do the job. And, frankly, our children are probably not going to be as invested in learning programming languages as we were. And for us, that was a game changer, right? Like at that point, if you didn't know programming, what were you, a dinosaur? And today, if you know programming, then what are you, a dinosaur? So, how do you even kind of then look forward to that future, and what do you prepare for, right? I mean, I'm sure I want to be excited about the future, and I want to think about my place in the world in that context, even in a professional context. But I have no visibility, is what I feel. Do you agree that that's true?
No, true. And also, I'm just thinking back how we linked some of these skills to the person that, oh, you're very good with logic, and hence you must know programming, or hence you
Yeah.
must do coding, right? A little bizarre now that we look at it, that coding is not really the skill, right? So,
Logic is the
yeah.
skill, right? So, yeah.
Correct. So you could have deployed it in different ways too, or it could have been encouraged in different ways too. But yeah, to come back to this, it's really about, I think today, what am I doing? Can I break it down for myself? What are the parts of me that I'm using in a way? What are the parts of me that I'm enjoying? And what do I want to add to that to actually make it more enjoyable? Right, and enjoyable in the sense that it's useful to me, it's productive, or it gives me a source of income, or it just gives me pure joy. Like, that enjoyable is for each of us to define.
Figure
Right.
out. Yeah. Yeah.
I was reflecting, thanks to this future self, past self, you know conversation in my head, and I was reflecting on my career, and I kept saying, oh, for 15 years I was a banker. And honestly, I don't think I was a banker. I was somebody who every day went to work and truly enjoyed running an operations slash process shop, right? It was
Right.
about
Right.
the process. It was about, uh, is the workflow the best that it can be for the customer that we are serving? Are we using the best technology? Are we using our people to the best of their capability? How can we make this better, faster, easier, simpler, etc.?
Yeah.
And hence, I was actually industry agnostic. Because
And the funny thing is, I feel like maybe you may not have come to that conclusion if you had not gone through that journey, right? And so it's just so true for all of us that as much as we want to be in this business of predictive intelligence about our own careers and professional paths, sometimes you just have to be in it. And that's something I've personally experienced, and as well, over the last year or so, is that there are certain aspects of business to which I'm well suited, and then there are some aspects of business at which I positively suck, right? Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. So it's sometimes just about being in it and then knowing, right? So, and just imagine, we have so many things today. We can be podcasters, we can be artists, we can be scientists, all from the comfort of our armchairs, actually. So, how do we really go about figuring out, even to say that, hey, this is something I see myself enjoying 5 years from now? And the reason this actually came up is because I was talking to my daughter about how I wanted to be an astronaut when I was 13. And then I realized the quantum of physics involved. Did you get the pun? And then I kind of decided not to, throw myself into that to that extent. Do I regret it? No, I actually don't. Like, I think I would have been a lot more miserable studying for being an astronaut than I am doing whatever I am doing today. So, how do you even go about just sometimes, I think, being curious enough about the world, right?
yeah. Okay, on a side note, I'm a little disappointed you didn't say throw yourself into the deep sea, but moving on.
I'll do more of that this year. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's becoming more and more clear to me that it's really about the present self, right? It's there's very little we can. I won't say, I guess it's unfair to say very little, right? We can't all just kind of keep doing stuff without any notion of where we want to be or what we want to achieve. But having said that, if you're, like I said, like I was a banker, but I didn't want to be the CEO of an investment bank or something like that. It was about the day-to-day work, the process, the people, the technology, seeing new technology, seeing new ways of doing things, right? And in a way, because that was my day-to-day that I enjoyed and kept contributing to, or kept kind of honing, my entrepreneurial journey was an extension of it. And now I can see it, that it was an extension of it, that, hey, you have to do new stuff. What's the best way to do it? What's the best process? How do you get the right people for you? What are the tools that you could use? What's a good technology to use? I think a lot of the work that we've done, Hasita, has been easier because for both of us, we share that mindset that, hey, if there's a tool, we'll try it out and we'll figure it out on our own, and we'll see how best it can serve us. So whether it meant kind of building our websites on our own, learning a WordPress, learning Wix, or it meant just think about how this podcast journey started, right? We said, hey, there's a tool called Anchor, and you just have to record and upload, right? So if I can figure out the tool, the talking part, I'll also figure out.
In fact, I remember the days when we used to just do it on the phone on an Anchor link. I think both of us had to join the call, and we used to, it's kind of interesting to think where it all started. But yeah, you're right. I think sometimes your hindsight is 2020, right? Like you can look back and say, hey, I started there and I'm here now, and this is exactly the process I followed, which is sometimes a problem that I have with a lot of business and leadership biographies and autobiographies as well. Because I do wonder how many of them knew what they were doing when they started out, right? And it's just, as much as we say, hey, look to the future, have some goals, have some ambitions. In fact, I think January is the season for having goals and resolutions and ambitions and so much of that. But maybe it really just begins with smaller mindset shifts, right? And if I had to really say, okay, this year I'm going to think deeply about who I will be 5 years from now, how do I go about it? Is there a process at all?
Again, using that bit of hindsight, but also saying, how do I make it useful for me going forward? And I think what has served both of us really well is that we cast a pretty wide net in terms of what we are open to consuming and trying and experiencing, right? And not everything that we try we're good at or we're successful at, and some of the things we don't even enjoy. But in that moment, when we try something, we kind of give it our all, right? I think like there was a time when we said, hey, audio is happening. Audio is where things are shifting to. And both of us were like evangelists for Clubhouse, like there's no tomorrow, right?
We even had our own room or something, didn't we? Where we said, this is going to be where we build our audience of 10,000 people. But as we know, that didn't happen. But
but it was just our way of understanding audio as a medium, technology around audio. How do you kind of speak, or how do you gather an audience? How do you address that audience in what is essentially a monologue or a dialogue? Right. So it's really keeping ourselves open to newer experiences, not everything. And then there are some which you don't learn from also, which is fine. You move on.
Which in itself is a learning, I suppose. Okay, hey, this is something I know I don't enjoy. Like, it's fine. Yeah.
Correct.
Fair enough.
Like I know that when GST came in, there were quite a few entrepreneurs who were saying, this is very easy to do. You're the business owner. You should know how to, fill in that file to the second decimal point and upload it on your own, etc. Fair enough. I learned it. I know how to do it, but I can also outsource it. Right? Like that.
No, I just learned from your experience and I outsource it to begin with because, speaking of things we don't enjoy. Yeah. But you're right in the sense that we couldn't have found that out had we not had some personal or individual experience, or B, learned from somebody else's experience. And therefore maybe I should read those founder biographies a little more carefully. Why not?
One of the good ones that I read in the early days, and that's because um, I joined the kind of founding batch of upgrad on entrepreneurship, was Ronnie Screwwala's book, I think, Dreaming with Your Eyes Wide Open, uh,
Mhm.
or similar such title, where it's about that just to your point of those biographies where they seem to know where they were headed. His was very clearly that, hey, I just kept trying one thing after the other, right?
Yeah,
And took a
yeah.
lot of big risks and went into areas like cable TV, etc., where it was an unknown, but used the skills that I had and the experience that I had till that point to say, how do I make this work,
Hmm.
right?
So,
But the thing that got me thinking about this wide net is, um, why do some of us consume so much? And I think both of us have had that experience where a friend or a colleague or someone we know will say, "Hey, why are you reading about that? Or why are you watching that? Or why are you listening?" Like, it's the breadth is pretty wide, right? From
hmm.
um, you know British dark humor to you know
Catastrophes involving airplanes, investigative journalism about airplanes, if I had to be more precise. Yeah,
to really small town true crime. Um,
yeah.
you
Emily in
know,
Paris.
yeah,
Uh,
Emily in Paris, which is as fun as it gets, but it's still about marketing. Uh, that wide net to me is the most useful trigger for what I do next, because
hmm.
something I read somewhere, something I listen to somewhere, kind of just out of the 20 things, like one or two sit in my head, and then it becomes a conversation in my head, and then it becomes a conversation with you perhaps, and then there's some output from
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
right?
In
So
fact,
for
that's
me
so
it is.
true of a lot of work we do as well, right? Wherein it's not all coming from one manual or one
Mm,
guidebook that says, "Hey, follow these 4 steps and you'll
mm,
get to where you are." But it's more of
mm,
that gathering of information, almost like how you'd gather, I think, fruits in a basket, I guess, if
mm,
it could be described that way.
yeah.
Knowing that it's always there, is there is some comfort. And I'm kind of reminded of this anecdote about how why do dogs stick their faces out of the cars even though they get
Mm,
bugs in their eyes.
mm,
And the answer to that is because there's joy in the journey.
mm,
And I thought that was quite a beautiful story. It's valuable to be curious in and of itself, I think. And the end result, to answer your question, Subha, where do I see myself 5 years from now? I think I'm going to start by looking at myself 5 years prior and
mm.
just kind of look at the journey itself and see what led to what, and how maybe that is something that can be continued going forward as well.
Yeah, and I think that's, for the listeners, if I may, like, the takeaway that would make me happy is to just not worry so much about that one version of your future self, which is for whatever reason fixed in your mind, right? But worry more about, or think more about, what is that journey to my future self going to be like, right? What are the different things I'm going to do? What are some of the things I'm not going to do? um, what are some of the new ideas that I'm going to let enter my mind, right? Because
Yeah,
today a
yeah.
lot of what the ideas that do reach us are so heavily filtered by algorithms and what you've already consumed, right? So to be mindful of that and say, hey, what's that one thing that today I came across but I don't know about, so then shall I
Hmm.
just spend 2 minutes on it? And honestly, folks, it just takes a few minutes here and there. Listening to one podcast, and there was a mention of ship of Theseus, and then I said, okay, what is this ship of Theseus story? And it's a very nice story about how the ship was getting rebuilt, or like patchwork or work done on it, or repaired so many times, that then the existential question came that,
Is
is
this
this
the
still the
same
ship
ship?
of Theseus,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so that person 20 years from now, um, because there's so much patchwork done on us, right?
yeah.
Parts we're adding, parts we're taking away, new experiences, new thoughts, new ideas, some good, some bad, that is not the same you.
And I think that is the beautiful thing about the journey itself, that we get to be those ships the patchwork ships that are different tomorrow than they are today. I like that idea.
Yeah.
So which ship will I be 5 years from now?
Oh no, that's the new interview question. Which ship will you be 5 years
Hopefully
from
not
now?
the Titanic.
I love how you can go dark so quickly.
I know. I was just going to say I'm going to hell for this, but I think we should stop recording.
Yeah. So I think that's really, the future self is going to happen one way or the other. You don't have to say, hey, I can't do anything about it. You also don't have to plan for it 200%, but focus on the today, and step by step you'll get there. And that you won't be able to predict that. When you look back, it'll be a very different version than what you thought. All that is fine, but enjoy the today and see how you can expand your horizon, your view, your thoughts today.
Sounds amazing.
Bye, folks. Catch you next time. Hey, small talkers. Thank you for listening till the very end. We love bringing these episodes to you, and we hope you enjoy them too. Please do drop in your comments, likes, shares, reviews, whatever you can do on the platform that you're on to help us reach a larger and larger audience. And that would really make our day. You can find out more about today's guest or today's episode in the show notes. All the details and how you can find us on social media is right there. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.